3 months ago, a billionaire shot his pregnant wife in front of 300 people at a charity gala. The video went viral. 47 million views. Everyone called her a victim. But here is what they did not know. She planned the whole thing. My name is Claire Ashford, and I am that woman. The night my husband tried to kill me was not an accident. It was a trap. One I spent 6 months building, because he murdered my brother and bought his way out of justice. So I made him confess on camera, in front of the world, where his money could not save him. If you have ever felt powerless against someone untouchable, this story is for you. Stay until the end, because what happened next will shock you. Drop a comment telling me what time you are watching from, and if you believe justice matters, hit that subscribe button. Let us begin. 3 months ago, my husband tried to kill me in front of 300 people. The video has 47 million views on TikTok. It has been shared across Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. Every news channel played it on loop for a week straight, but what you did not see in those phone recordings, what you could not hear over the screaming and the sirens, is what I did next. My name is Claire Ashford. I am 28 years old. I am 6 months pregnant, and I am the woman the internet calls the Whitmore Gala victim. But I am not a victim. Let me show you what really happened that night. The video starts at the charity gala. You can see the golden lights, the crystal chandeliers, the women in designer gowns. The camera is shaking because someone is trying to run while filming. Then you hear him. Marcus Whitmore, my husband. His voice cuts through the music like a knife. "You have been stealing from me," he shouts. "Sleeping with that cop." The camera swings toward me. I am standing near the main staircase in a white silk dress. My hands rest on my pregnant belly. I look calm, too calm. That is what the comments say. Why isn't she scared? They ask. She looks like she knew this was coming. They are right, I did know. Then you hear my response. My voice is steady, loud enough for every camera in the room to pick up. "I found where you hid the money. Marcus, from my brother's fund. The fund for the man you had killed." The crowd gasps. The camera zooms in on his face. He is furious. His hand moves to his jacket. Someone screams. Then you see the gun. The next 5 seconds explode across every social media platform in the world. Marcus raises the weapon. A man in a dark suit lunges forward. The gunshot cracks through the audio. People are screaming. The camera drops. When it comes back up, there is blood on the marble floor. The man who jumped in front of me is Ryan Mitchell. He is my brother's former partner, former NYPD detective. He took the bullet in his left shoulder. He survived. Marcus was arrested on the spot. The video ended with him in handcuffs, screaming that I had set him up. He was right about that too. But here is what the video does not show. Here is what happened before that night, 6 months before the gala. I was sitting in my brother's old apartment, going through his files. Daniel had been dead for 2 years. Car accident, they said, but I never believed it. Daniel was the best driver I knew. He was careful. He was a cop. He knew how to stay safe. I found his laptop hidden in a false drawer under his desk. It took me 3 weeks to crack the password. When I finally got in, I found everything. Recordings, documents, evidence. Daniel had been investigating Marcus Whitmore for months before he died. Embezzlement, bribery, fraud, and something worse. Something that made my blood run cold. Marcus had paid someone to tamper with Daniel's car. The brake line was cut. My brother did not die in an accident. He was murdered. I sat in that apartment for 6 hours reading every file, listening to every recording. When I finished, I knew what I had to do. I could go to the police. I could try the legal route. But Marcus Whitmore was a billionaire with connections that reached into every courthouse and police station in the state. His father was a judge. His lawyer was one of the best in the country. No, the legal system would not work. Not against a man like him. So I decided to destroy him the only way that would stick. Publicly, permanently, with the whole world watching. I reached out to Ryan Mitchell. He had been Daniel's partner for 5 years. After Daniel died, Ryan quit the force. He could not prove what happened, but he knew. We met at a coffee shop in Brooklyn. I showed him the files. "This is everything we need to put him away," Ryan said, his hands shaking as he read through the documents. But we need to be smart about this. Marcus has judges in his pocket. We need evidence that cannot be thrown out. I know, I said. That is why we are going to make him confess, in front of everyone, on camera, where he cannot take it back. Ryan looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded. Tell me what you need. That was 4 months before the gala. We spent every day planning. I played the perfect wife. I smiled at Marcus's business dinners. I attended his charity events. I pretended everything was fine. But behind the scenes, I was building a trap. My best friend Jessica Thompson runs a digital marketing agency. She is a genius with social media and video editing. I told her everything. Together, we created a TikTok account documenting my life as a billionaire's wife. Pretty photos, elegant dinners, life in a penthouse. I never mentioned Marcus by name, never showed his face, but I dropped hints. Small things. A bruise on my arm I covered with makeup. A comment about how my husband controlled my phone. A video where you could hear him shouting in the background. The account grew fast. 2 million followers in 3 months. Women who saw themselves in me. Women who understood what it meant to feel trapped. They did not know what was coming, but they would be there when I needed them. Then I told Marcus I was pregnant. I was already 4 months along, but I had been hiding it with loose dresses. When I finally told him, his face turned white, not from joy, from rage. You did this on purpose, he hissed, to trap me. I said nothing. I just watched him realize that a baby meant I had more legal claim to his money. That divorce would cost him even more now. That night, I heard him on the phone with his lawyer. Find a way out of this, he said. I do not care what it costs. Perfect. The next day, I left my phone unlocked on purpose. I had created fake text messages between me and Ryan. Nothing explicit, just enough to look suspicious. Lunch meetings, late night calls, messages that could be read as romantic if you wanted to see it that way. Marcus saw them. I knew he did because that night he grabbed my arm hard enough to leave marks. Who is Ryan Mitchell? He demanded. My brother's old partner, I said, pulling away. He has been helping me go through Daniel's things. Stay away from him. Why are you jealous? His eyes went dark. I am warning you, Claire. I filed that moment away. The rage, the jealousy, the control. I would need all of it later. 2 weeks before the gala, I suggested we host a charity event for Daniel's memorial fund. Marcus loved the idea. It would make him look good, generous, a devoted husband supporting his grieving wife. He had no idea he was walking into his own execution. That is how we got to the night of the gala. 300 guests, live streamers, reporters, cameras everywhere, and me, standing in the center of it all, waiting for him to take the bait. The Whitmore Tower ballroom looked like something out of a dream. Golden chandeliers hung from the vaulted ceiling, casting warm light across the marble floors. Wait staff in crisp uniforms carried trays of champagne. A string quartet played near the main staircase. Every detail was perfect. Marcus stood near the bar, surrounded by his business partners and investors. He wore a custom-tailored suit that probably cost more than most people made in a month. He looked confident, powerful, untouchable. Everyone in the room wanted something from him. Money, influence, access. He fed on that hunger. It made him feel invincible. I watched him from across the room. My white silk dress caught the light as I moved. Guests kept stopping me to comment on how radiant I looked, pregnant and glowing. They said, Marcus must be so proud. I smiled and thanked them. I placed my hand on my belly protectively. I played the part perfectly. But inside, I was counting down. Jessica had arrived an hour earlier disguised as part of the catering staff. She wore a simple black uniform and carried trays of appetizers. No one paid attention to her. That was the point. While she worked, she placed tiny wireless cameras in strategic locations around the ballroom, hidden in flower arrangements, tucked behind picture frames, angled from the balcony. 7 cameras in total, all streaming directly to her laptop in the service hallway. Ryan Mitchell stood near the entrance in a dark gray suit. He was officially listed as a security consultant for the event. Marcus had not bothered to check his background. Why would he? Ryan was just another hired hand, another nobody. But Ryan and I had rehearsed this moment a dozen times. He knew exactly where to stand, exactly when to move. Exactly what to do when Marcus finally snapped. At 8:30, I sent a text to Marcus. We need to talk. Now. About the fund. He read it across the room. I watched his jaw tighten. He excused himself from his conversation and made his way toward me. What is this about? He asked, his voice low and sharp. Not here, I said, glancing at the crowd. Too many people. Then what did you mean in your text? I looked him directly in the eye. I know what you did to Daniel. His expression did not change, but I saw something flicker behind his eyes. Fear, just for a second. I do not know what you are talking about. Yes, you do, I said calmly. I found the payments, the offshore accounts, the money you have been stealing from the memorial fund. I found all of it. His face went red. You went through my files. I went through my brother's files, I corrected. Daniel knew what you were doing. That is why you had him killed. Marcus grabbed my wrist. His grip was tight enough to hurt. Several people nearby turned to look. You are crazy, he hissed. You do not know what you are talking about. I pulled my hand back and raised my voice, just enough. Let go of me, Marcus! More heads turned. Phones came out. This was it. The moment everything would change. Marcus looked around and realized people were watching. He forced a smile and lowered his voice. We will talk about this at home. No, I said loudly. We will talk about it now. I am done hiding your secrets. His smile vanished. Claire, I am warning you. Or what? I challenged. You will hurt me the way you hurt Daniel. That did it. Something inside him broke. He had spent years controlling me, silencing me, making me small, and now, in front of everyone who mattered to him, I was defying him. His hand went to his jacket. Ryan saw it before anyone else. He started moving toward us. Marcus pulled out a black handgun. Someone screamed. The music stopped. Guests stumbled backward, knocking over chairs and champagne glasses. You have been stealing from me, Marcus shouted, his voice echoing through the suddenly silent ballroom. Sleeping with that cop. He raised the gun toward me. I did not move. I kept my eyes on him. I needed this on camera. I needed everyone to see what he really was. I found where you hid the money, Marcus, I said, my voice carrying across the room. From my brother's fund, the fund for the man you had killed. For one frozen second, nobody moved. Then Marcus pulled the trigger. The gunshot was deafening. It echoed off the marble walls like thunder. But I never felt the impact. Ryan had reached me just in time. He shoved me sideways and took the bullet himself. It hit him in the left shoulder. Blood sprayed across my white dress. Ryan collapsed onto the floor with a grunt. I dropped to my knees beside him, my hands pressing against the wound. The warmth of his blood soaked through my fingers. Chaos erupted. People were screaming and running for the exits. Chairs toppled. Glasses shattered. Someone was sobbing hysterically near the bar. Marcus stood frozen, the gun still in his hand. He was staring at Ryan, at the blood, at me. He looked confused, like he could not quite process what he had just done. That was when Detective Sarah Bennett appeared. She had been waiting outside with a team of officers, listening through the wire Ryan was wearing. She moved fast, her badge already out. Drop the weapon, she shouted. Now. Marcus blinked. Then his survival instincts kicked in. He dropped the gun and raised his hands. She set me up, he said, his voice desperate. She has been planning this. She staged everything. Detective Bennett ignored him. Two officers grabbed Marcus by the arms and forced him to the ground. One of them kicked the gun away, while the other snapped handcuffs onto his wrists. Marcus Whitmore, you are under arrest for attempted murder, Detective Bennett said. Marcus twisted his head to look at me. You did this, he spat. You lying. Shut up, one of the officers said, pulling him to his feet. Cameras were everywhere now. Phones held high, live streams broadcasting to thousands of viewers. The footage was already uploading to TikTok, Twitter, Instagram. By morning, it would be everywhere. I kept my hands pressed to Ryan's shoulder. Blood seeped between my fingers. Stay with me, I whispered. Please stay with me. Ryan's eyes found mine. His face was pale, but he managed a weak smile. Did we get him? We got him, and I said, tears streaming down my face. We got him. Paramedics rushed in with a stretcher. They gently moved me aside and began working on Ryan. One of them, Dr. Catherine Pierce, checked his vitals and started an IV line. He is stable, Dr. Pierce said, but we need to move now. They lifted Ryan onto the stretcher. As they wheeled him toward the exit, he reached out and squeezed my hand once. You did good, Claire Byrne, he said. Then they were gone. Pushing through the crowd toward the waiting ambulance, Detective Bennett approached me. Are you hurt? I looked down at myself. My white dress was covered in blood. My hands were shaking, but physically I was fine. No, I said. The baby is fine too, I think. Let me get you checked out, Detective Bennett said, guiding me toward another paramedic. As I walked through the ballroom, I saw the faces of the guests. Some looked horrified. Others looked sympathetic. A few were still filming. I caught sight of Jessica near the back. She gave me a small nod. She had everything, every angle, every word, every second of Marcus's confession. Outside, red and blue lights flashed against the building. News vans were already pulling up. Reporters were scrambling to set up cameras. The story was breaking in real time. Marcus was shoved into the back of a police car. He was still shouting, still insisting I had set him up. The door slammed shut, muffling his voice. I stood on the steps of the Whitmore Tower, watching the car drive away. My husband, the man I had loved once, the man who had killed my brother. He was finally going to pay. At least, that is what I thought. The hospital waiting room smelled like antiseptic and burnt coffee. Fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a harsh white glow. I sat in an uncomfortable plastic chair, still wearing my blood-stained dress. A nurse had offered me scrubs to change into, but I refused. I wanted to stay exactly as I was until I knew Ryan was okay. Jessica sat beside me, her laptop balanced on her knees. She had been monitoring social media for the past 2 hours. Her fingers flew across the keyboard as she tracked the spread of the video. 40 million views across all platforms, she said quietly. And climbing fast. The hashtag Justice for Claire is trending worldwide. I barely heard her. My eyes stayed fixed on the double doors that led to the operating room. Every time they opened, I sat up straighter, hoping for news. Finally, Catherine Pierce emerged. She pulled off her surgical mask and walked toward me. He made it through surgery, she said. The bullet went clean through the shoulder. No major arteries hit. He was very lucky. I let out a breath I had not realized I was holding. Can I see him? He is in recovery right now. Give it another hour. I nodded. Relief flooded through me so intensely I thought I might collapse. Dr. Pierce sat down in the chair across from me. You should let someone examine you too. You have been through a traumatic event, and you are 6 months pregnant. I am fine, I said automatically, let me be the judge of that. She was right. 20 minutes later, I was in an exam room having my blood pressure checked. The baby's heartbeat filled the room through the ultrasound machine, steady and strong. Dr. Pierce smiled. Everything looks good, but you need to rest. Your blood pressure is elevated. That is normal given what you have been through, but stress is not good for you or the baby. I will rest. I lied. After I see Ryan. When I finally got to his room, Ryan was awake but groggy. His left shoulder was heavily bandaged. An IV dripped clear fluid into his arm. He looked pale and exhausted, but his eyes were alert. You look terrible, he said, his voice rough from the breathing tube. I laughed, and it came out half sob. You got shot. You do not get to complain about how I look. Fair point. He shifted slightly and winced. Did they get him? They got him. He is in custody. Ryan nodded slowly. And the recording, Jessica has everything in 7 different camera angles. Audio is crystal clear. You can hear every word he said. Good. Ryan closed his eyes. Then it was worth it. I pulled a chair close to his bed and sat down. Thank you for what you did. I know you did not have to. Yes, I did. Ryan interrupted. Daniel was my partner, my friend. If it were reversed, he would have done the same for me. We sat in silence for a moment. Then Ryan said, what happens now? Now we wait. I said, Detective Bennett is building the case. She has Marcus on attempted murder. And once she goes through Daniel's files, She will have him on conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, embezzlement. He is done. Do not underestimate him, Ryan warned. Men like Marcus Whitmore do not go down easy. He has money, connections. He will fight this. I know, I said. But this time, the whole world is watching. He cannot make this disappear. Or so I thought. The next morning, I woke up in a hospital room I did not remember checking into. Someone, probably Dr. Pierce, had decided I needed to stay overnight for observation. My phone sat on the bedside table, buzzing constantly. I picked it up and immediately regretted it. Hundreds of notifications, text messages, missed calls, social media alerts. Most were supportive, people sending prayers and encouragement. But mixed in were other messages, angry ones, accusatory ones. You set him up. Gold digger trying to steal his money. Poor Marcus Whitmore. His crazy wife ruined him. I scrolled through Twitter. The hashtag Justice for Claire was still trending, but so was Stand with Marcus. Bots and paid accounts were flooding the platform with counter-narratives. Videos claiming I had staged the whole thing. Deepfakes showing me supposedly admitting the plan to friends. None of it was real, but it was effective. Public opinion was splitting. Jessica arrived around noon with real clothes and coffee. Do not read the comments, she said immediately. Too late. They are bot accounts. Marcus's PR team is in full damage control mode, but the legitimate accounts still outnumber the fake ones by a lot. People believe you. For now, son, I said. She handed me the coffee. We knew this would happen. Rich, powerful men do not go down without a fight. But we have the evidence. That matters more than Twitter bots. I wanted to believe her. That afternoon, Detective Bennett came by. She looked tired but determined. We are building the case, she said, pulling up a chair. The video from the gala is solid. Multiple witnesses, Ryan's testimony. But Marcus posted bail this morning. My stomach dropped. What? His father, Judge Thomas Whitmore, personally vouched for him. $2 million bail. Marcus paid it in cash. He is out. My voice rose. After he tried to kill me. I am sorry, Claire. His lawyers argued that he is not a flight risk. He surrendered his passport. He is under house arrest with an ankle monitor. But yes, technically, he is out. I felt sick. How is that possible? His father, Detective Bennett said bitterly. Judge Whitmore has connections at every level. The arraignment judge owed him favors. I tried to fight it, but money wins. I finished. Not always, she said firmly. We are going through Daniel's files. The evidence he collected is damning. Wire fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy. We will get Marcus on multiple felonies. This is not over. But it felt over. Marcus was home, free, probably already planning his next move. There is something else, Detective Bennett said carefully. Marcus's lawyer filed a motion to suppress evidence. They are claiming that Daniel's files were obtained illegally, that you broke into property that belonged to Marcus and stole confidential documents. Those were Daniel's files, I said. From Daniel's apartment. I know, but some of the documents reference Marcus's business dealings. His lawyer is arguing that they are protected by attorney-client privilege, that you had no right to access them. So they might throw out the evidence. They will try. We have a hearing next week. I will fight it. But you need to be prepared for the possibility that the judge might side with Marcus. After she left, I sat alone in the hospital room, staring at the wall. Ryan was right. Marcus was fighting back. And he was using every weapon he had. My phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You should have stayed quiet. Claire, Joe, now you will lose everything. I blocked the number, but 5 more texts came from different numbers, all saying variations of the same thing. Threats, warnings. Jessica came back and found me crying. They are getting to you, she said. No, I said, wiping my eyes. I am just tired. But that was a lie. They were getting to me, because for the first time since the gala, I realized something terrifying. Exposing Marcus might not be enough. The truth might not be enough. Not when he had money and power in a system designed to protect men like him. What if I had just made everything worse 1 week after the shooting? I was discharged from the hospital. Jessica drove me to a safe house that Ryan had arranged through his old NYPD contacts. It was a small apartment in Queens, anonymous and forgettable. The kind of place no one would look twice at. I hated it immediately, not because of the apartment itself, but because it represented everything I had lost. My home, my independence, my safety. Marcus was still under house arrest at our penthouse. The penthouse I had helped decorate, the place I had called home for 3 years. Now he was there, and I was here. The hearing to suppress Daniel's evidence was scheduled for Monday. Detective Bennett said the judge assigned to the case was Judge Patricia Winters, a no-nonsense woman with a reputation for following the law strictly. That should have been good news, but I could not shake the feeling that something was about to go wrong. Jessica stayed with me at the safe house. She had taken time off from her agency to help me full-time. Every morning, she monitored social media, tracking the narrative around the case. The bots were still pushing the Stand With Marcus hashtag, but real people were drowning them out. Celebrities had started speaking up. Journalists were writing think pieces about domestic violence and billionaire impunity. Public pressure was building. Ryan was released from the hospital on Saturday. His arm was in a sling, and he was on pain medication, but he insisted on coming to see me. "You should be resting," I said when he showed up at the door. "So should you," he countered, settling carefully onto the couch. "How are you holding up?" "I am fine." He gave me a look that said he did not believe me for a second. "Okay," I admitted. "I am terrified. What if the judge throws out the evidence? What if Marcus walks?" "He will not walk," Ryan said firmly. "Even if Winters suppresses some of the evidence, we still have the video from the gala. We have witnesses. We have my testimony. That alone is enough for attempted murder. But not for Daniel's murder." Ryan's expression darkened. "No, not for that. Not unless we can use the files." Monday arrived too quickly. Detective Bennett picked me up at 7 in the morning. The courthouse was already surrounded by reporters and cameras. Protesters held signs. Some said justice for Claire. Others said innocent until proven guilty. Inside, the courtroom was packed. I sat behind the prosecutor's table. Marcus sat across the aisle with his legal team. He wore an expensive suit and looked calm, almost bored. When our eyes met, he smiled. Not a warm smile, a predator's smile. Judge Patricia Winters entered, and everyone stood. She was in her 60s with steel gray hair and sharp eyes. She looked at both sides with the same expression of mild impatience. "Let us get started," she said. "This is a hearing on the defense's motion to suppress evidence. Mr. Sullivan, you may proceed." Richard Sullivan was Marcus's lead attorney. He stood and buttoned his suit jacket. "Your Honor, the evidence in question was obtained illegally. Ms. Ashford broke into her brother's apartment and removed files that contained privileged information about my client's business dealings. She had no warrant, no legal authority. The Fourth Amendment protects my client from this kind of unreasonable search and seizure." The prosecutor, Margaret Foster, stood immediately. "Your Honor, the apartment belonged to Daniel Ashford, Ms. Ashford's brother. She had legal access as his next of kin. The files were his personal investigation notes, not privileged attorney-client communications. But the files contain confidential business information," Sullivan argued. "Information that Mr. Whitmore never consented to share. That makes them inadmissible." Judge Winters looked thoughtful. "Ms. Foster, do you have documentation proving Ms. Ashford's legal access to her brother's apartment?" "Yes, Your Honor." Foster handed over a folder. Lease documents showing Daniel Ashford listed his sister as an emergency contact with full access rights. Sullivan did not miss a beat. "That may give her access to the apartment, but not to privileged documents found within it. If I leave a confidential file at a friend's house, that friend does not gain the legal right to distribute it." Back and forth they went for over an hour. Legal arguments I barely understood, precedents and statutes and case law. I watched Judge Winters' face, trying to read her thoughts. She asked sharp questions of both sides, revealing nothing about which way she was leaning. Finally, she held up a hand. "I have heard enough. I will take this matter under advisement and issue a ruling by the end of the week. Court is adjourned." She stood and left before I could even process what had happened. "What does that mean?" I asked Margaret Foster. "It means we wait," she said. "Winters does not rush decisions. She will review everything carefully before ruling." And if she rules against us, Foster hesitated, then we lose the financial evidence. The wire fraud charges, the conspiracy charges. We would still have the attempted murder case from the gala, but we would lose the connection to your brother's death. I felt the ground shift beneath me. That night, I could not sleep. I lay awake in the unfamiliar bed, staring at the ceiling. Everything I had worked for, everything Daniel had died for, might be thrown out because of a legal technicality. The next morning, Jessica showed me something that made my blood run cold. A video had gone viral overnight. It showed a deep fake of me. The technology was good, too good. In the video, I was supposedly talking to a friend, admitting that I had planned the whole gala incident, that I had goaded Marcus into violence, that I wanted to steal his money. "This is fake," I said, but my voice shook. "I know," Jessica said, "but it has 15 million views. People are sharing it like it is real. Can we prove it is fake?" "Yes, I already ran it through detection software. It is definitely a deep fake. But by the time we get that message out, the damage will be done." She was right. By noon, Stand With Marcus was trending again. News outlets were showing the fake video and asking if there was more to the story than people thought. My phone rang. It was Detective Bennett. "Claire, I need you to stay calm," she said, which immediately made me panic. "What happened, Ed?" "Judge Winters issued her ruling early. She granted the motion to suppress." My heart stopped. "What? Daniel's files are out. We cannot use them at trial. The financial evidence is inadmissible. We still have the attempted murder charge, but we lost everything else." I felt like I was falling. So Marcus gets away with killing Daniel. "Not if I can help it," Bennett said, but it just got a lot harder. I hung up and sat down on the couch. Jessica sat beside me, her hand on my shoulder. "This is not over," she said, but it felt over. The evidence was gone. Public opinion was turning, and Marcus was still free. That evening, another text came from an unknown number. "Told you, you cannot win. Drop the charges now, or I will destroy you." I stared at the message for a long time. Then I did something I had not let myself do since the night of the gala. I broke down completely. I sobbed until my ribs ached. I screamed into a pillow. I let all the fear and frustration and rage pour out. Jessica held me through it all. When I finally stopped, she said, "We are not giving up. You hear me? We are not done." But in that moment, I was not sure I believed her, because for the first time, I wondered if trying to take down Marcus Whitmore had been the biggest mistake of my life. I woke up the next morning with a decision made. If the legal system would not help me, I would use the one weapon Marcus could not control: public opinion. Jessica was already awake, working on her laptop at the small kitchen table. She looked up when I walked in. "I have an idea," I said. "I am listening. We go live on TikTok. Right now, I tell my side of the story, all of it. The fake video, the suppressed evidence, the way Marcus is using his money to twist the system. We put everything out there." Jessica's eyes lit up. "That could work, but you have to be ready. Once you do this, there is no taking it back. You will be fully exposed." "I am already exposed," I said. "Might as well control the narrative." 30 minutes later, I was sitting in front of Jessica's ring light with my phone propped on a makeshift tripod. I had changed into a simple sweater, no makeup, no attempt to hide the dark circles under my eyes. I wanted to look exactly like what I was, a woman fighting for her life. Jessica started the live stream. Within seconds, viewers started pouring in. 100, 1,000, 10,000. The number climbed rapidly. I took a deep breath and spoke. "Hi, my name is Claire Ashford. Most of you know me as the woman whose husband tried to kill her at a charity gala. The video of that night has been seen by millions of people. But there is a lot you do not know. A lot I have not been able to say because I have been trying to do this the right way. Through the courts, through the system. But yesterday I learned that the evidence against my husband has been thrown out. The files that proved he embezzled money and had my brother killed are now inadmissible. And a fake video of me supposedly confessing to setting him up has gone viral. So I am done playing by rules that only protect the powerful. Here is the truth. For the next 20 minutes, I told them everything. How Daniel had been investigating the Marcus, how he died under suspicious circumstances, how I found the evidence and planned the gala confrontation, how Ryan took a bullet meant for me, how Marcus posted bail in hours while I hid in a safe house, how the system was failing me at every turn. By the time I finished, over 8 million people were watching live. The comments section exploded. I believe you. This is why women do not come forward. Justice for Claire. We see you, boys. We are with you. But mixed in were other comments. Hateful ones. Threats. People calling me a liar, saying I deserved what I got. Jessica ended the stream after I said my final piece. If you are watching this and you have ever felt powerless against someone with money or influence, you understand what I am going through. I am not asking for sympathy. I am asking for justice. And I am asking you to keep watching, because this is not over. Within an hour, the video had been clipped and shared across every platform. News outlets picked it up. Hashtags trended. Celebrities started commenting. A famous actress tweeted, "Believe Claire Ashford." The momentum shifted. That afternoon, my phone rang. It was a number I did not recognize. "Miss Ashford, my name is Melissa Grant. I think we need to talk." Melissa Grant? Marcus's mistress? I had seen her in photos. A 25-year-old Instagram model with 2 million followers. Beautiful, young, exactly the kind of woman Marcus would choose. "What do you want?" I asked carefully. "I saw your video," she said. Her voice shook. "And I have recordings too, of Marcus. He was not kind to me either." My pulse quickened. "What kind of recordings?" "Him bragging about bribing a judge, about how he was going to make sure you never saw your baby, about a lot of things." "Why are you telling me this?" Melissa was quiet for a moment. "Because I thought I was special. I thought he loved me. But after what he did to you, I realized I was just another thing he controlled. And I am done being quiet." We agreed to meet the next day at a coffee shop in Manhattan. Jessica came with me. Melissa showed up wearing oversized sunglasses and a baseball cap, clearly trying to avoid recognition. She pulled out her phone and played the first recording. Marcus's voice was unmistakable. "Claire thinks she is smart, but Winters will throw out the evidence. My father already spoke to her. She owes us a favor from way back. And once the murder charges disappear, attempted murder is all she has. I will plead down to assault. 18 months. Maybe less with good behavior. Then I will take the baby. Claire will have nothing." I felt sick. Judge Winters had been bought, just like everything else. "There is more," Melissa said, playing another clip. This one was Marcus talking to someone else, probably his lawyer. "Daniel Ashford was a problem. I paid $50,000 to have his car taken care of. Clean. No evidence. The cops ruled it an accident just like I knew they would." There it was, a confession to murder. Clear and undeniable. "Why did you record these?" I asked. Melissa looked down at her hands. "He scared me sometimes, the way he talked about people. The way he hurt me. I started recording everything just in case I ever needed protection. I never thought I would actually use them. Can I have copies?" She nodded and airdropped the files to my phone. 7 recordings in total, each one more damning than the last. "Thank you," I said. "This changes everything." When we got back to the safe house, I immediately called Detective Bennett. She arrived within the hour. "This is gold," she said, listening to the recordings. "This is exactly what we need. Marcus confessing to bribing a judge, confessing to Daniel's murder. This is admissible because Melissa recorded him with his knowledge in a one-party consent state. So we can use it." "Absolutely. I am reopening the investigation into Daniel's death, and I am bringing these recordings to the district attorney today." Marcus is done. For the first time in weeks, I felt hope. But hope, I was learning, was a dangerous thing. The district attorney filed new charges against Marcus the next day. Murder conspiracy, bribery of a public official, obstruction of justice. Bail was revoked. A team of officers went to the penthouse to arrest him. He was not there. The ankle monitor had been cut. Marcus Whitmore had fled. Detective Bennett called me with the news. "We have issued a warrant on every law enforcement agency in the state is looking for him. He cannot hide forever." But Marcus was not hiding. He was hunting. It happened 2 nights later. I was asleep in the safe house when I heard glass breaking. I jolted awake, my heart pounding. Jessica was in the other room. I heard her scream. Then I heard his voice. Claire, I know you are here. Marcus, I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, but before I could speak, my bedroom door slammed open. Marcus stood there, wild-eyed and disheveled. He looked nothing like the composed billionaire I had married. He looked like a man who had lost everything and had nothing left to lose. You destroyed me, he said, stepping into the room. Everything I built, everything I am, you took it all. Marcus, please, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. The police are coming. This is only going to make things worse. Worse, he laughed bitterly. How could it possibly be worse? You turned the world against me. You made me a monster. You did that yourself, I said. When you killed my brother, when you tried to kill me. He moved closer. I backed up until I hit the wall. I loved you, he said. I gave you everything, and you repaid me with betrayal. You never loved me, I said. You loved controlling me. There is a difference. His hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. I tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. He dragged me toward the door. We are leaving, he said. Right now, you and me, we are going to disappear. And if you fight me, I will make sure you never see that baby. Says terror flooded through me. He was serious. He was going to take me somewhere, hurt me, maybe kill me, and no one would find me in time. That was when Ryan appeared in the doorway. Let her go. Marcus, he said. His left arm was still in a sling, but his right hand held a gun, steady and unwavering. Marcus froze. You are not going to shoot me. Yes, I am, Ryan said calmly. If you do not let her go right now. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Marcus shoved me hard toward the stairs. I stumbled and fell, my shoulder slamming into the wall. Pain shot through my side. I cried out. Ryan fired. The bullet hit Marcus in the leg. He screamed and collapsed, clutching his thigh. Blood seeped between his fingers. Claire, are you okay? Ryan asked, keeping the gun trained on Marcus. I nodded, gasping for breath. The baby. Ambulance is on the way. Police sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Jessica ran into the room, her phone in her hand, her face pale with shock. I called the second I heard him break in, she said. Within minutes, the apartment was flooded with officers. Paramedics rushed in. One team worked on Marcus, who was cursing and shouting threats. Another team checked me over. Is the baby okay? I asked the paramedic desperately. She pressed a stethoscope to my belly, listening intently. After what felt like an eternity, she nodded. Heartbeat is strong, but we need to take you to the hospital for a full exam. At the hospital, Dr. Catherine Pierce ran every test imaginable. Ultrasound, blood work, fetal monitoring. Finally, she smiled. Your baby is fine. You are fine. But Claire, you need to rest. Real rest. This level of stress is not sustainable. I nodded, but I barely heard her. All I could think about was Marcus's hands on me, his rage, how close I had come to losing everything. Detective Bennett came to my hospital room later that night. Marcus is in custody, she said. We have him on breaking and entering, assault, attempted kidnapping. Bail is denied this time. He is not getting out. What about the murder charges? Still moving forward. Between Melissa's recordings and the new charges, the district attorney is confident. But Claire, there is something else. My stomach dropped. What? Marcus's lawyer filed a motion this morning. He is claiming you provoked the attack, that you have been harassing him. He is arguing self-defense. Self-defense? I felt hysteria rising. He broke into my apartment. He tried to kidnap me. I know, and it will not work. But he is also filing for emergency custody of the baby. He is arguing that you are an unfit mother who put the child in danger by antagonizing him. I stared at her. He is trying to take my baby. He is trying everything he can. His lawyer is good. They are going to drag this out as long as possible. After she left, I sat alone in the dark hospital room. My body ached. My mind raced. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Marcus's face, heard his voice, felt his hands on me. The door opened quietly. Ryan stepped in. You should be resting too, I said. So should you. He sat down in the chair beside my bed. Claire, I am sorry. I should have been there sooner. You saved my life. Again. Barely. We sat in silence for a while. Then Ryan said, you know he is not going to stop, right? Even from jail. He will keep fighting, keep trying to hurt you. I know. So what are you going to do? I looked at him. I am going to destroy him completely, publicly, so thoroughly that he never has power over anyone ever again. Ryan smiled slightly. How? By giving the world everything, every recording, every document, every piece of evidence. I am going to make a documentary, put it online, let people see exactly who Marcus Whitmore is. The courts might be slow, but the internet is fast. That is risky. Everything about this has been risky, I said, but I am done playing defense. It is time to end this. Jessica and I spent the next 3 weeks building the documentary. We worked from the safe house, barely sleeping, barely eating, just cutting footage, recording voiceovers, organizing evidence. The documentary would be 2 hours long. It would include everything. The gala shooting from 7 different angles. Daniel's investigation files, Melissa's recordings of Marcus confessing to murder and bribery, security footage of Marcus breaking into the safe house, my testimony, Ryan's testimony, Melissa's testimony, everything. We titled it, The Whitmore Truth, How a Billionaire Got Away with Murder. Jessica built a release strategy. We would premiere it simultaneously on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter, and Instagram. We would send advance copies to every major news outlet and journalist who had covered the story. We would make it impossible to ignore. This will explode, Jessica warned. The moment we release this, your life changes forever. You will not get privacy back. Are you sure? I am sure, I said. Ryan came by the day before the release. He looked concerned. Marcus's lawyers are going to come after you for this, he said. Defamation, invasion of privacy, they will throw everything at you. Let them, I said. Truth is a defense. Everything in the documentary is documented and verified. I am not lying. I am just telling the story the courts would not let me tell. And if they still find a way to hurt you. I met his eyes. Then at least the world will know what he did. That has to be enough. The night before the premiere, I recorded one final message to camera. My face was tired but determined. My name is Claire Ashford. Tomorrow, you will see a documentary that shows you exactly who Marcus Whitmore is. Not the billionaire philanthropist the world thought he was, but the man who murdered my brother. The man who tried to murder me. The man who used his money and power to buy his way out of justice. I am releasing this because the legal system failed me. Because judges can be bribed and evidence can be suppressed. But the truth cannot be suppressed. Not anymore, Marcium. If you are watching this, please share it. Please make sure everyone sees it. Because Marcus Whitmore does not deserve to hide. And victims like me deserve to be heard. At midnight, we hit publish. Within 5 minutes, the video had 1,000 views. Within an hour, 100,000. By morning, it had 10 million. News outlets scrambled to cover it. CNN ran segments. The New York Times published an analysis. Social media exploded. Celebrities shared it. Politicians commented on it. Even international outlets picked up the story. The hashtag #WatchWhitmoreTruth trended #1 worldwide. Marcus's lawyers filed an emergency injunction to take it down. A judge denied it. The documentary was protected speech. More victims came forward. Women Marcus had abused. Business partners he had defrauded. People he had threatened into silence. The floodgates opened. His company's stock crashed. Board members resigned. Investors pulled billions. Judge Thomas Whitmore, Marcus's father, was investigated for corruption. The recordings Melissa provided were enough to start a formal inquiry. Within days, he was suspended from the bench. Everything Marcus had built was crumbling, but he still had one weapon left. The custody hearing. His lawyers argued that I had endangered the baby by provoking Marcus, that my reckless pursuit of vengeance had put my unborn child at risk. They painted me as unstable, vindictive, dangerous. I sat in that courtroom listening to them twist the truth into something unrecognizable. The judge assigned to the custody case was Judge Margaret Coleman. She had a reputation for being tough, but fair. I prayed she would see through Marcus's lies. Margaret Foster, the prosecutor who had been helping me from the beginning, stood to present my side. Your Honor, Miss Ashford is not reckless. She is a survivor. She did what any person would do when the system failed her. She told the truth. Mr. Whitmore, on the other hand, is a convicted felon awaiting trial for murder. He broke into her home and assaulted her while she was pregnant. The idea that he deserves custody is absurd. But Marcus's lawyer, Richard Sullivan, was smooth. Your Honor, my client made mistakes. Terrible mistakes born out of emotional distress caused by his wife's betrayal. But he has rights as a father. He deserves the chance to rehabilitate and be part of his child's life. Ms. Ashford, by contrast, has shown a pattern of behavior designed to destroy my client. She is not acting in the best interest of the child. She is acting out of revenge. Judge Coleman looked at me. Miss Ashford, do you have anything you would like to say? I stood slowly. My hands shook, but my voice was steady. Your Honor, I am not here for revenge. I am here to protect my daughter. Marcus Whitmore tried to kill me. He killed my brother. He broke into my home and tried to kidnap me. Those are facts, not opinions. I released that documentary because I wanted the world to see the truth, because I was terrified that he would find a way to hurt me again. And now he is trying to take my baby. Not because he loves her, but because it is the last way he can hurt me. Please do not let him. The courtroom was silent. Judge Coleman closed her folder. I will issue my decision within 48 hours. Those 48 hours felt like 48 years. I spent those 2 days in a state of suspended terror. Every time my phone buzzed, I thought it was the court calling with bad news. Jessica stayed with me constantly, trying to distract me with movies and food I could not eat. Ryan called every few hours to check in. Coleman is fair, he kept saying. She will make the right call, but I could not shake the fear. What if she did not? What if Marcus somehow convinced her that I was the problem? On the second day, my lawyer Margaret Foster called. Judge Coleman issued her ruling. She said, Dad, can you come to my office? I drove there with Jessica. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. In Foster's office, she handed me a printed copy of the decision. I scanned it frantically, looking for the conclusion. Then I found it. The court finds that Marcus Whitmore poses a clear and present danger to both Ms. Ashford and the unborn child. His history of violence, his disregard for the law, and his attempts to manipulate the legal system demonstrate that he is unfit for custody or visitation. All parental rights are hereby terminated. Furthermore, a permanent restraining order is issued. Mr. Whitmore is prohibited from contacting Miss Ashford or the child in any form, now or in the future. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood. We won, I whispered. Foster smiled. You won. I started crying. Not sad tears. Relief. Pure, overwhelming relief. Jessica hugged me tightly. It is over, Claire. It is really over. But it was not quite over yet. The murder trial was still coming. 3 weeks later, I sat in a packed courtroom as the trial began. Marcus looked gaunt. Prison had not been kind to him. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by an orange jumpsuit. His hair was unkempt. His face was pale, but his eyes still held that same cold rage. The prosecution's case was overwhelming. They played Melissa's recordings. They showed the financial evidence of bribery. They brought in experts who testified that Daniel's car had been tampered with. They showed the video of Marcus shooting at me. Ryan testified about Daniel's investigation, about how Daniel had suspected Marcus for months before his death. Melissa testified about the recordings, about Marcus's abuse, about his threats. I testified and asked. The prosecutor asked me to walk through everything, from the moment I found Daniel's files to the night of the gala to the break-in at the safe house. I spoke clearly and calmly, though my hands shook the entire time. Marcus's lawyer, Richard Sullivan, tried to shake me on cross-examination. Ms. Ashford, is it not true that you planned this entire scenario, that you deliberately provoked my client into a violent reaction so you could film it? No, I said. I gave him the opportunity to confess publicly. He chose to pull a gun instead. But you knew he had a temper. You knew he might react violently. I knew he was dangerous, I said. That is exactly why I needed witnesses. Because men like your client do not face consequences unless the whole world is watching. The courtroom murmured. The judge called for order. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. When they returned, the foreman stood. On the count of conspiracy to commit murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of attempted murder, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of bribery of a public official, we find the defendant guilty. Guilty, guilty, guilty. Marcus's face went white. For the first time, I saw real fear in his eyes. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in prison. No possibility of parole for 15 years. As the guards led him away, Marcus turned to look at me one last time. His mouth moved, forming words I could not hear, but I knew what he was saying. This is not over. But it was, because he had no power anymore. No money, no freedom, just a cell and the consequences of his actions. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed me. I made a brief statement. Justice has been served, not just for me, but for my brother Daniel, for everyone Marcus Whitmore ever hurt. I hope this case shows other victims that the truth does matter, that speaking up does matter. Even when the system fails you, do not stop fighting. The cameras flashed, questions overlapped, but I walked away feeling lighter than I had in months. 6 months passed. My daughter, Danielle Rose Ashford, was born on a cold November morning. She weighed 7 pounds and had Daniel's eyes. I named her after my brother, so he would always be with us. Ryan was there when she was born. So was Jessica. They had become my family in the truest sense, not by blood, but by choice. Life after the trial was strange. The media attention faded eventually, but I was still recognized everywhere I went. People stopped me in grocery stores to thank me, to tell me I inspired them, to share their own stories of abuse and survival. It was overwhelming, but also meaningful. I started the Daniel Ashford Foundation officially. It provided legal assistance and financial support to victims of domestic violence. Within 6 months, we had helped over 200 people escape dangerous situations. Jessica ran the digital side, building a network of resources and support groups online. Ryan worked as a security consultant, helping victims create safety plans. We were building something good from all the pain, but healing was not linear. Some days I was fine. Other days I woke up from nightmares about Marcus breaking through my door, about the gunshot at the gala, about Ryan bleeding on the marble floor. I started therapy, twice a week. I sat in a small office and talked through the trauma. It helped. Slowly. Marcus sent letters from prison sometimes. I never opened them. Ryan disposed of them before I could even see the envelopes. He does not get to be in your head anymore, Ryan said. He was right. Judge Thomas Whitmore was convicted of corruption and sentenced to 15 years. The irony was not lost on anyone. The man who had protected his son now shared his fate. Melissa Grant moved to California and started a nonprofit for women escaping abusive relationships. We stayed in touch. She was doing better, healing in her own way. 1 year after the trial, I was invited to speak at a conference on domestic violence and legal reform. I almost said no. The idea of standing in front of hundreds of people and reliving the worst moments of my life felt impossible. But then I thought about all the messages I received. The women who said my story gave them courage. The men who said they finally understood what abuse looked like. The teenagers who said they would never let anyone control them. So I said yes. The day of the conference, I stood backstage with Danielle in my arms. She was 9 months old and full of smiles. Jessica adjusted my microphone. "You have got this," she said. I walked onto the stage to applause. The lights were bright. The crowd was enormous. But I took a breath and started speaking. 1 year ago, I was terrified every day. I was married to a man who controlled every aspect of my life, who killed my brother when he got too close to the truth, who tried to kill me when I refused to stay silent. The legal system failed me over and over. Evidence was suppressed, judges were bought, money and power seemed to win every time. But I learned something important. The system is not the only place where justice happens. Sometimes justice happens when ordinary people decide they have had enough, when they refuse to be silenced, when they tell the truth, even when it costs them everything. I talked for 20 minutes about Daniel, about the gala, about the documentary, about the trial, about the cost of survival. When I finished, the entire room stood. The applause was deafening. Afterward, dozens of people lined up to talk to me, to share their stories, to thank me. One woman, probably in her 40s, waited until everyone else was gone. Then she approached me quietly. "I am still married to my Marcus," she said, her voice shaking. "I have been trying to leave for 3 years, but he has lawyers, he has money. He says he will take my kids. I feel trapped." I looked her in the eye. "You are not trapped. You are planning. Document everything. Find people you trust. Build your case. And when you are ready, fight. You are stronger than you think." She hugged me, crying. "Thank you." That night, back at my apartment, I sat in the nursery watching Danielle sleep. Her tiny chest rose and fell peacefully. She had no idea what her first year of life had looked like, what her mother had gone through to keep her safe. Someday I would tell her about Daniel, about the fight for justice, about how hard it was and how worth it. But for now, I just let her sleep. Ryan knocked softly on the door. "How was the speech?" "Exhausting," I said, "but good." He sat down in the rocking chair beside me. "You know Daniel would be proud of you, right?" I smiled. "I hope so. I know so." We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Then I said, "Do you ever think about what would have happened if I had not found those files, if I had just stayed quiet?" "You would not have stayed quiet, Owen," Ryan said. "That is not who you are." He was right. I never could have stayed quiet. Not about Daniel, not about justice. "Thank you," I said. "For everything, for believing me, for protecting me, for being here. Always," he said simply. After he left, I stayed in the nursery a little longer, thinking about everything that had happened, everything I had lost and everything I had gained. Marcus was in prison. His father was in prison. Justice had been served. But the scars remained, the fear, the hypervigilance, the way my heart still raced when I heard unexpected noises. Survival was not the same as winning. Victory was not the same as healing. But I was here. Danielle was safe, and that had to be enough. The air was crisp and cool in Central Park. Fall leaves scattered across the walking paths in shades of red and gold. I pushed Danielle's stroller along the tree-lined trail, watching her reach for the sunlight filtering through the branches. She was 16 months old now, starting to talk, always laughing. Jessica walked beside me, sipping coffee from a paper cup. "The foundation raised another 50,000 this month," she said to me. "We are going to be able to expand to 3 more states." "That is amazing," I said. But part of me still felt strange about it. The foundation existed because of trauma, because of pain. It helped people, yes, but it was born from the worst moments of my life. "You are allowed to feel good about the work we do," Jessica said, reading my mind. "Even if the reason we started is terrible." "I know." We walked in silence for a while. Then I saw Ryan jogging toward us. He waved. His shoulder had healed completely. He barely limped anymore. "I got news," he said, slightly out of breath when he reached us. Detective Bennett called. Marcus tried to appeal his sentence. My stomach tightened. And it was denied, unanimously. He is not getting out. Relief flooded through me. "Good. There is more," Ryan said. His father died in prison last week. Heart attack." I waited for some feeling to surface. Satisfaction, maybe. Or sadness for the man Marcus could have been if his father had been different. But I felt nothing. Just a distant acknowledgement that the world had one less corrupt person in it. "Okay," I said simply. Ryan studied my face. "Are you all right?" "Yeah," I said. "I think I am." We continued walking. Danielle babbled happily in her stroller, oblivious to the conversation. Later that afternoon, I met with my therapist, Dr. Robert Matthews. He was a kind man in his 60s who specialized in trauma recovery. "How are the nightmares?" he asked. "Better," I said. "I only had 2 this week." "That is progress." "It does not feel like progress. Recovery is not linear," he reminded me gently. "You went through something most people cannot imagine. The fact that you are functioning at all is remarkable." "I do not feel remarkable. I feel tired." He nodded. That is normal too. We talk for the full hour about triggers, about boundaries, about the strange guilt I felt for being happy sometimes. Dr. Matthews listened carefully and offered tools, breathing exercises, grounding techniques, ways to remind myself I was safe. That evening, I took Danielle to visit Daniel's grave. I had not been in months. I knelt in front of the headstone and traced his name with my finger. "Hi, big brother," I said softly. "I brought someone to meet you." Danielle reached out and patted the cold stone with her small hand. "This is your Uncle Daniel," I told her, even though she could not understand. "He was brave and good, and he would have loved you so much." I told Daniel about the trial fight, about the foundation, about how many people we had helped, about how his death had not been in vain. "I did it?" I whispered. "I got him. Marcus is in prison. Your name is cleared. Justice was served." A breeze rustled through the trees. For a moment, I let myself believe it was Daniel telling me he was proud. The next week, I received an unexpected message. It was from a producer at a major streaming service. They wanted to make a limited series about my story, a dramatized version of the documentary. "This could reach millions of people," Jessica said excitedly. "Think about the impact." But I hesitated. Did I want my trauma turned into entertainment? Did I want actors reenacting the worst moments of my life? "You do not have to decide right now," Jessica said. "Take your time." I thought about it for days. Finally, I called the producer back. "If we do this, I have conditions." I said, "I want creative control. I want the focus to be on the legal failures, not just the drama. And I want a significant portion of the profits to go to the foundation." "Done," the producer said. "All of it." So we moved forward. The series would take a year to produce. I worked closely with the writers, making sure the story stayed truthful, making sure it honored Daniel, making sure it did not glorify Marcus. During filming, I visited the set once. Watching an actress portray me at the gala was surreal. She wore a white dress similar to mine. She stood in the same position, but when the actor playing Marcus raised his gun, I had to leave. It was too much. Ryan found me sitting outside, shaking. "You do not have to watch," he said gently. "I know, but it feels wrong not to. Claire, you already lived it. You do not have to relive it for a TV show." He was right. I never went back to the set. The series premiered 10 months later. Critics called it powerful and unflinching. Audiences responded strongly. It sparked conversations about domestic violence, legal corruption, and the limits of the justice system. The foundation's donations tripled overnight, but the attention was exhausting. I did interviews because I knew it helped the cause. But every time I talked about Marcus, I felt pieces of myself being pulled back into that darkness. "You are allowed to step back," Dr. Matthews told me. "You have done enough. Let other people carry the torch for a while." So I did. I stopped doing interviews. I stopped reading articles about myself. I focused on Danielle, on the foundation, on healing. 2 years after the trial, I took Danielle to the beach. It was the first vacation I had allowed myself. We stayed in a small rental house away from everything. No phones, no internet, just sand and ocean and quiet. Danielle ran through the waves, laughing every time the water touched her feet. I sat on a blanket and watched her. She was 3 years old now, happy, safe, loved. For the first time in years, I felt something close to peace. That night, after Danielle fell asleep, I sat on the porch watching the stars. The ocean whispered against the shore. Everything felt impossibly far away. Marcus, the trial, the cameras, the fear. I thought about what Dr. Matthews had said during our last session. "You survived, Claire. That is not the same as winning, but it is enough. You are allowed to just exist now. You do not have to keep fighting." Maybe he was right. Maybe surviving was enough. I pulled out my phone and opened my notes app. I had been writing down my thoughts for months, trying to process everything that had happened, trying to make sense of the pain. I wrote one final entry. People asked me if it was worth it, if I would do it all again, knowing the truth is, I do not know. I lost so much. My sense of safety, my privacy, years of my life consumed by fear and anger. But I also gained something, I gained my voice. I proved to myself that I am stronger than I thought. I showed my daughter that you fight for what is right, even when it is hard, especially when it is hard. Marcus Whitmore is in prison. He will never hurt anyone again. My brother's name is cleared. The foundation helps dozens of people every month. That has to mean something. But I also know that justice and healing are not the same thing. I got justice. I am still working on healing. And maybe that is okay. Maybe the point is not to be fixed or whole or perfectly fine. Maybe the point is to keep going, to build something good from the wreckage, to love my daughter and honor my brother and help others when I can. Maybe that is enough. I closed the app and looked out at the dark water. Somewhere in a prison cell, Marcus Whitmore was probably still angry, still bitter, still convinced he was the victim. But I was here, free, with my daughter sleeping safely inside, with friends who loved me, with a purpose that mattered. I had won, not perfectly, not without scars, but I had won. And tomorrow, when Danielle woke up, we would build sandcastles and collect shells and make new memories that had nothing to do with fear, because that was what healing looked like. Not a dramatic finale, not a perfect ending, just small moments of peace, strung together day by day, until someday you realize you are okay. I was not there yet, but I was getting closer. And for now, that was enough.